Welcome to episode 25 of Take Your Points. I'm your host, Ronan Scott, and this week's show we're talking about coronavirus and the lockdown in the GAA. And I've asked four of our columnists to give us their thoughts on the current situation. I wanted to ask them what they think of the current lockdown, what their mood is like, how they think the GAA has dealt with it, and what their expectations are going forward. So let's get started. First up, let's speak to Gerard O'Kane. Gerard, I wanted to know what your mood is like at the moment in the current lockdown.
Well, with regards to lockdown, I would have to say that my own mood is I'm generally quite happy. Where I live, we're quite rural here in Glenallen, so our own house and family have plenty of scope around our own house. We have fields around us. In terms of my day-to-day, what I'm doing, I still work every day from my normal work, so I'm just working at home, so that helps pass the day for me from say 8:30 in the morning until 4:30 in the afternoon. And it's only then that I find the evenings a bit long sometimes, but we have our own gym down the back, so I'm fit to use that when I want. There's plenty of room to go for a run if I want to. I'm getting to spend a lot more time with my family members, so in general my lockdown mood's quite happy. I will say that my fiancée, she's a Cavan woman, so I've only seen her once in 11 weeks, and it was a fleeting meet for a few hours. So that can be quite tough on both me and her, and we've had to cancel our wedding as a result. But other than that, I can say that my time during lockdown, I've spent it quite productively. I haven't got into any bad habits. I've got into a good routine, and I'm quite happy with it at the minute, given with everything else that's going on around us.
Okay, I wonder if I could ask the same question to Shane. Shane, what's your mood like at the moment with regards to the current lockdown situation?
To be honest, Ronan, the mood's quite good. I've been working, so that's helped. I feel for those people who haven't been able to work, actually, because I think having work has given structure and a purpose to my day and to my weeks, really. I work in the health service, so it's been a very, very busy couple of months, so I haven't really that much to complain about in that respect. I've probably been out exercising a bit more as well, which helps the dog as the legs walked off itself. So I'm getting out and about plenty. So again, those little things help with the mood overall, because if you were in the house all day and you had no work to go to and you hadn't really the structure and purpose that work give you, then I think that would be more challenging, and that's where I think people will struggle with their mood, and they'll struggle with their overall well-being. So I've been lucky in that respect that work has given me a focus and a structure to the week, so the weekends feel like weekends, and you feel that you've always something to look forward to. So overall, I would say the mood's good, and I've little to complain about.
Okay, Fionnuala, can I ask you the same question? What's your mood like at the moment in the current situation?
The mood has generally been quite good in lockdown. At the start it was very surreal, and it was a lot of worry and panic and stress, and you're concerned about yourself and your job and your loved ones. And I think as time has went on, people have responded quite well and they've been very good in adhering to the government guidelines. And me personally, I'm actually quite enjoying the sort of downtime from life. I'm very lucky I'm still working from home and I still have a job, but I don't miss the travelling and the driving to here, there and everywhere and up and down from Dublin for training. So it's given me a bit of time to rethink, take stock, and hopefully I won't go back to the madness of the hamster wheel again.
Okay, and finally, Cahal, lockdown, how are you dealing with it all?
In terms of the mood within lockdown, to be honest with you, it's been, I suppose, it's pretty positive. I think it took a while for myself to adapt to the new normal, as they talk about. The change from working from the office environment to working at home now, and the lack of, I suppose, the GAA has been a big factor in that. Pre-season had up until the mid-March been going well and on a personal note, it was good to be back after last year's injury. So I was raring to go at that stage, have not, I suppose, taken away from myself and the rest of the teammates who had put in a lot of work in terms of the first quarter of this year, and then with no GAA being on the horizon, it has been difficult, but the way I have looked at it, it's day at a time and take each day as it comes and control the controllables. And we've been in terms of work, I'm fortunate enough that we have been very busy during this time as a lawyer specialising in construction. There has been a lot of work and advisory work on that, which has been good. I suppose I was due to get married this summer, and that has been postponed, which I suppose was one of the big issues. I think Gerard's in the same boat, but at the end of the day, you can't control that, and we've postponed it to 2021, and we're concentrating on the things that we can control. But the mood's been pretty good. Weather's been great, which has really helped, and we've been doing as much exercise and training, etc., to keep mind and body together that we can. So positive for
Staying
now,
with
but
you, Cahal,
really
I wonder if you
hopeful
can ask
that
answer the next
the season can get back up and going, and we can get back to
from club
this
right
new
up
normal,
through to
whatever
the
that is.
senior level. How do you think the GAA has dealt with the current lockdown situation?
In terms of the leadership from the GAA in this part of the world, where there maybe has been for a long time an absence of leadership in terms of the political sense, the GAA have always been there and always stepped up from a grassroots point of view. When the dicta came down in terms of the lockdown from a GAA sense, ahead of any direction from the government, both north and south, the GAA showed leadership and acted first and acted in the best interest of its members, and I have absolutely no doubt that has saved countless numbers of lives by doing that. And so even throughout this lockdown period, from grassroots right up to council level, they have shown, and also from the members, have shown great leadership, be it posting social media videos of skills for kids to do during their time away from school, to going out in the community and working with other associations to provide food packages to those vulnerable, to actually helping spread the word and helping in terms of getting the message out there about the easing of the lockdown, and also how you best to protect your friends and family. The GAA has shown great leadership across the piece, and they should be commended for that. And as I said, I think they've no doubt saved lives.
Okay, and what do you think, Shane? Do you agree? How do you think that they have dealt with the current lockdown situation?
How's the GAA? Yeah, good question. I actually think the GAA played a blinder from top to bottom. Ronan, I said that in a column way back when this whole thing started, that Central Council were quick, they were decisive, they were calling off all activities when Cheltenham was, hundreds of thousands of people were going to Cheltenham. Liverpool were still playing the Champions League, but the GAA were decisive, they were quick out of the blocks before many of the other professional sporting organisations in ceasing their activities, and I think they're to be commended for that, and I think they've been proven to be right in making such a quick and decisive decision, particularly when you look at some of the stuff that's going on at government level. But and then the clubs have followed the direction of Central Council to the letter. I look at my own club and they have religiously adhered to the regulations. There's no talk, and even around the local club, the other local clubs, you can see there's no talk of flouting the rules. There's no talk of clubs starting to train or starting to get stuff up and running again. You know, people are very aware of the seriousness of the situation, and the GAA has had a huge part to play, I think, in terms of how the country have handled the overall crisis that we're in. So they're to be commended for that. I think I made reference in an earlier column that it could turn out to be the GAA's finest hour, and I absolutely stand by that. I think John Horn has shown great leadership, and I think the clubs, not only have they followed the letter of the law, but they've been a driving force in their own communities looking after the more vulnerable. So I think it has proven itself to be the top voluntary organisation that it is. that we all knew that it was, but that the crisis has really proved that beyond any doubt.
Okay. What about you, Fionnuala? Have they done a good job? Have they dealt with it well?
I think the GAA has handled the whole pandemic quite well. Like, the GAA is the largest sporting organisation in Ireland. They have tens of thousands at their games every week. We were in the middle of the National League. The provincial championships were going to start, and they acted swiftly, and they followed the government guidelines, and they put people before money and gate fees, and they look after people. I know some people would like to have facilities open, but if you give people an inch, sometimes they take a mile, and I think they responded quite well. I'm looking forward to getting back when it does come back. But as a whole, when you're faced with a global pandemic that nobody in our lifetime has ever seen before, I think they have to be commended in the way they reacted.
And Gerard, what do you think about the situation? You have a good understanding of how the top level works, and do you think that they have dealt with things well?
During lockdown, I think that the GAA has handled the situation quite well. Obviously, they've come in from criticism from some level, but you have to just be careful of the GAA's managing this on an all-Ireland basis. And I distinctly remember on the 12th of March, whenever Leo Varadkar came out around 11 o'clock that morning, I was sitting in work and he gave a press conference to say that as of Friday the 13th, schools will be closing indefinitely with no plan of reopening. Our under 16s were due to start their league that night, and I'm involved with them, and different county boards, I think Dublin was maybe the first, started to release statements within an hour to say that all games would be called off that night, that weekend, until further notice. And one came through about Derry around 1 o'clock, and that was only 2 hours after the Taoiseach had come out with his statement. And people who are in the north of the island, then we were sitting in work and people were wondering about the schools here, but I think the GAA maybe forced people's hands in that decision, in that a lot of the schools were maybe still opening at the start of the following week for St Patrick's Week, but people weren't sending their children because they thought if they're not safe to play sport, why are they safe to go to school? And I think the GAA was a great leader in that respect. We've now moved on, we're about 10 or 11 weeks into it, and as everything moves in stages, and obviously the government would tell you that it's harder to reopen as to close down, and I think the GAA is in that situation. It's easy to make the call to shut down everything at one go, but they're now at the stage of what do they reopen, when do they reopen it, and how do they phase it. At the minute, I think there's talk that the GAA might reopen walkways around pitches because the government has opened all their public parks to allow people to gather in sixes. So people are calling on the GAA to open the public pitches, because if you live where I live in Glenalm, there is no public park for 10-15 minutes. So if people want to gather publicly, they have to do it at the GAA pitch. And I think the GAA is just cautious about how that they would manage groups gathering on pitches. The weather's good at the minute, young ones gathering, and I wouldn't blame them for taking a cautious approach. That and all that stems from any decision made at Central Council down. And I think one of the big decisions, or one of the big pieces of information that came across during lockdown, was John Horn fronting up on the Sunday game. And I have to say he was very open and honest, and the point that he made about there would probably be no GAA while social distancing still in place, I think that he was quite direct about it, and I think he purposely went on the show for that, to give people an indication of there's no point in planning for the next 2-3 months. If anything, you're talking about 5-6 months down the line, and you'll see what way this virus progresses. In terms of local level, you would know that every GAA club comes together in times like this, and I know certainly from my own experience in our club, we're doing a lot of work in the community, and I would know that every other club is doing it. You can see it well publicised and well advertised, and I think people are very appreciative of that. I've spoken to ones around the community who wouldn't have been massively involved in the GAA before, but they appreciate the knock on the door, they appreciate people reaching out, and I think the GAA should be definitely commended for that at a local level.
Okay. Well, one of the issues we have at the moment is expectations for the future. We're in lockdown at the moment, and there's talk of July perhaps for a return. Probably more likely to be later in the year, in autumn time, October, November perhaps, or maybe even not at all. But let's go through and see what your expectations are. Let's start with Fionnuala. Perhaps you could maybe tell us what you think is going to happen, what your thoughts are for the next number of months.
I'm generally very hopeful that there will be GAA played this year. Day to day, we've been getting good news or better news for how the pandemic has been progressing in Ireland, and I think people for 95 or 99.9% have adhered to all the government guidelines, and we're lucky that we're on an island and there's a lot of a rural population. I think it's all helped. We've stuck by it, and I think there's going to be GAA this year. I'm hoping that it'll be, fingers crossed, it'll be end of the summer, but it's better having GAA at the end of the summer than not having it at all, because if it doesn't happen, it's because there's a bigger picture at play, and if it doesn't happen, then we have to accept it and move on and put in place things for next year so that there'll hopefully be a GAA season next year. But on the whole, I'm hopeful, and fingers crossed we'll have a season to look forward to.
All right. Well, what about you, Shane?
As for the rest of the year, Ron, I don't think the honest answer to that question is nobody knows. And I mean nobody knows. I think we're still in the dark in terms of what the future holds. We're in the dark as to whether or not there'll be a second wave of the virus, and the implications of that would be quite serious for the rest of the year, I think. But if I'm a bit more optimistic than I was a couple of weeks ago that there may be some action. If you were asking me the same question a couple of weeks ago, I would have thought that the year was a write-off, to be honest. I just couldn't see a situation where there would be play this year. But I'm not as pessimistic now. I do think there's a chance that there will be games. I sincerely hope it wouldn't be my choice that they would be behind closed doors. I don't think that would be the right option at all. I dipped in a bit to the Bundesliga games when they started, and it just wasn't for me. There was no atmosphere, there was no intensity, and I wouldn't like to see that as an option going forward. And I'm not convinced that the players would like to see that either. Because part of the fun is playing in front of your friends and family and performing in front of the people and that's the whole part of the attraction for the players and the management, for that matter. So I wouldn't like to see behind the closed door. I think as we go on in the year, we need some clarity. We'll need to know one way or the other. Are we going, for players and management's sake, they can't keep kicking the can down the road. They can't keep pushing the deadlines from month to month. So I think the 20th of July is key. When the government have said there may be some participation in team sports, if that doesn't happen and it's kicked down the road again to August and beyond, I certainly think county action is out. I wouldn't be optimistic because I think the calendar will get too squeezed to play both club and county. The GAA have said that the club will take preference. So if I was to predict what I think would happen, I think we will see some club action, potentially late August, September, and October. But I'm not overly optimistic that there'll be county action this year. And that's where we need some clarity, because it's not fair to keep county managers and are we preparing, are we not, can we start, can we not? At some point a decision will have to be made, but from what I can see, I think we'll be lucky to get some club action, and realistically I don't think getting both club and county is going to be an option. I hope I'm wrong. I sincerely hope I'm wrong. It does look more positive. I think the virus seems to be waning a bit right across the country, so that's a good thing. But I still struggle with how, like John Horan said in his interview with the Sunday game, I struggle with how social distancing could still be a thing and we could be playing contact sport. The two just don't equate for me. If social distancing is still a thing, how can we play contact sport safely? And I think that's going to be the challenge. But I hope the decision doesn't sit with the GAA. I think that decision should sit with scientists who should guide the Central Council in terms of what the best way forward. So let's hope, fingers crossed I'm wrong and that we'll see both club and county, but if I was a betting man I would go that we'll see club action but not county.
Alright, okay. Well, Gerard, thoughts for the remaining months in the year? Are we going to see any more football? What do you think?
I suppose you're wondering what my expectation or my hope would be for GAA for the rest of the year. My expectation is different from my hope. Obviously my hope would be that we would get GAA going at some, if not all levels, so that we can run the season. The season might have to run off a bit quicker and be more condensed, but that would be the hope. But I think you have to be realistic and say your expectation is not going to be that. I would imagine that there will be little or no GAA at all until the schools are back functioning, because I can't see a situation where that the schools aren't safe to open on a viable level, but yet we're going to allow to send children or adults out to play Gaelic. So I think we're looking at anything past September as an early starting point. And once we get to that, even I know that there's an argument for opening inter-county first, because it's probably more manageable on a logistical scale, in that you're only dealing with 32 squads at 30 men plus the backroom teams, whereas on the club level you're dealing with thousands and thousands of people throughout Ireland on any given day. So I was reading somewhere about opening the inter-county game first as opposed to last, and using it as a test to see how it works, and if it, so you do it on a smaller scale and you build it up, which is the way you would do most things. But the GAA is in a funny situation there, where people want club to come first and they think it should be community based first, and there's an argument that come September, October time we can let the children play if they're back at school and see how that plays out from there. But I generally just don't know, because there's talk of a second wave coming in the autumn time, and then you're moving into the flu season towards winter, and I just generally don't know. And if I had to make a call now, I would probably say that I can't see any GAA be played this summer. I have prepared myself for it, or this season, sorry, I have prepared myself for it. I'm still doing my training that I'm doing every week, in terms of doing my athletic work, doing my gym work, doing my running. It's obviously not the same, but I'm doing that as much as keeping a routine during lockdown. But in terms of playing GAA, at risk of sounding negative, I just can't see how they're going to open up the GAA calendar, and with everything else that's going on. And I know it's a massive part of every society and their culture, but I can just see that the 2020 season has been a write-off, and if God willing that 2021 then they can get something started and get the ball rolling then, and hopefully there's developments with the virus. But if you had to ask me now as a definite question, I would say that the 2020 season unfortunately will be a write-off for everyone.
Okay, and finally, Cahal, do you agree with the rest of them? What's your thoughts for the remainder of the year?
I hope that the GAA will be back up and running in the summer, and that we'll have those great days out supporting our county and playing for our clubs. And my hope would be that you can see the people up and down the country going down to support their club, watch club games, and to travel to the big venues in Thurles or Croke Park or Pearse Stadium. That would be my hope for the rest of the remainder of the year. My expectation and unfortunately my reality are slightly different. We've heard the phrase being guided by the science, and I know in Leo's roadmap to reopening, the GAA I think has been described as semi-contact sport, and I don't really share that sentiment. But you're talking about phase 4 in terms of the reopening of that. But in reality, I think club action, and that's a big if, it comes back, will be towards the end of August. September, October is really what I'm thinking. And in terms of the inter-county game, October at the very earliest, if at all, and even at that point, I think it's probably going to be behind closed doors. Would be my reality. My expectation, going back a month, was that there wouldn't be a ball kicked or a slither booked in anger this year, but given the numbers coming out from this week, where both North and South recorded zero COVID-19 related deaths on separate days this week, there are positives coming out of this, and I think the flatten the curve has occurred. So you have to be guided by the science here, and what I would say is that we shouldn't be rushing back and taking unnecessary risks, because yes, this year we all want to get back to those warm summer days and watching our favourite teams or playing our favourite sports, but ultimately that's not worth taking the risk with vulnerable family members or people within our community. So if it has to be forgotten about this year and come back next year when it's safe to do so, that would be my preference. Ultimately, in terms of where we are, my expectation would be we're looking at September, October before anything happens, and even then it would be certainly behind closed doors. So the outlook possibly isn't that good, but ultimately priority has to be the health and safety of members and people in our community, and the GAA has shown leadership to date, and as long as that continues, I think we'll be okay. But 2020 season, I think it'll just go down as a quiz question to try and catch people out, because I don't see there being much GAA action happening this year.
Okay, well, that's some interesting points made. I mean, we are in difficult times, and we're in one of the strangest periods the GAA has ever seen. So it was interesting to get your thoughts, and I really appreciate you taking the time to record these videos in this odd situation, but thanks for taking part. Well, that's the end of our show. Thanks everybody for tuning in or streaming or downloading. I hope you enjoyed it. And if you want to read more stories, I really encourage you to subscribe to Gaelic Life online. We are online fully at the moment. You can read the full PDF, or you can read us on the website, on your phone, on the app, very soon. But thanks again, and I hope to see you for episode 26.